But I think where Scott is underestimating Joe Biden, I think history will be kinder to Joe Biden as the years go by. I think Joe Biden did some things that were very important. Trump talked about infrastructure week every week and never did it. Joe Biden actually got it done. We had a real problem with our technology infrastructure being offshored. With the CHIPS Act, he brought some of that stuff back home. Joe Biden did some stuff that we can all be proud of as Americans. And as the years go by, those things will shine through. But right now, people are looking at him and looking at Kamala and looking at all of us and saying, what the heck did you guys do?
In today's video, Van Jones confronts Scott Jennings live in CNN's newsroom as their intense debate quickly reveals serious weaknesses in the Maga storyline, with Van Jones slicing through the spin, pushing back on culture war noise, and explaining how strategic messaging, not actual policy, influenced the political outcome. And when Scott Jennings criticizes Joe Biden's record, Van Jones answers with clear context, verified facts, and hard truths that turn the conversation on its head in real time. So let's jump in and see how Van Jones put Scott Jennings on the defensive on CNN's newsroom.
But what would you pick out and advise them? Where did it go wrong?
Well, I think the Democratic Party, in the eyes of a lot of working class voters and the eyes of a lot of men who overwhelmingly turned out for Trump in this election, kind of view the Democratic Party as a professional fainting society. I mean, we're offended by everything. We don't, have our eye on the real ball here, which is people being crushed in the economy, or we don't have our eye on the border. We don't have our eye on the world chaos. What we have our eye on is running around scolding everyone and being offended by everyone. I mean, that's no way to run a political party and then be surprised when average, everyday working people turn out against you. So if I were the Democrats, I mean, it's a time for soul searching. I feel for Brother Van a little because, the Republicans have been there too. But the reality is you just have to ask yourself a couple of questions. Who are we and who do we stand for? What do we represent? What are our actual values? And I think if they asked themselves those questions and answered them honestly, they'd find out that the only people they really stand for are very wealthy people who were not as crushed by inflation, people who have college degrees, who live in and around college campuses and in urban areas. That's it. That's pretty much what the Democratic Party has been reduced to.
What do you say, Van?
It's not true. Hey, listen, I think the Republicans have done a brilliant job of framing us that way, and I think we've helped them a lot. Because a lot of the stuff that we say does fall into the pity party, crybaby society stuff. I think that's right. But the tragedy to me is that what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris actually did and what they're promising to do really was responding to working class needs. A lot of stuff in the Inflation Reduction Act was really trying to help ordinary people. They ran on a campaign to try to get $6,000 to everybody who's having a new baby, $25,000 to people who want to have a house, to help small businesses. There was an agenda there, but we did not do a good job of talking about it. The crybabies took up all the airspace, and then they built a machine. Don't forget, the Republicans built a machine online to magnify our mistakes and to mask their failures. And what we did was run a bunch of crappy ads that everybody hated and spend $1 billion doing it. So there is a core there that is good, but we dropped the ball in the parking lot. We thought we were on the football field. We weren't even on the football field. We were in the parking lot, and we got to look in the mirror.
What makes this moment compelling is that Scott Jennings is speaking to a feeling many people recognize, but Van Jones stays much closer to the deeper reality, because the claim that Democrats only represent elite college-educated voters does not match what has actually been done in recent years when you look at policy instead of vibes. As Democrats passed the biggest infrastructure investment in decades with money going mainly to construction workers, electricians, union labor, and rural areas. Rather than coastal elites, while the CHIPS and Science Act is creating manufacturing jobs across red and purple states like Ohio, Arizona, and Texas with many facilities specifically hiring non-college workers, and even the inflation narrative starts to fall apart when real wage growth for lower-income workers beat inflation for much of 2023 and 2024. With Bureau of Labor Statistics data also showing union organizing efforts, many supported by Democratic appointees at the NLRB, reaching their highest approval levels in decades, which is not symbolic politics but real material improvement, and where Van Jones is especially accurate is on messaging, because Republicans poured resources into digital spaces like short-form clips, podcasts, and YouTube shows that push cultural grievances non-stop, while Democrats spent huge amounts on traditional ads that voters usually ignore. even though Pew studies show working-class voters are far more likely to get political information from casual online media than campaign advertising, leading to a situation where Democrats did not lack substance but failed to cut through the noise, allowing Republicans to define the brand first, which is not a failure of values but a failure of communication, and unless that gap is closed, policy victories alone will not turn into political victories.
One of the most powerful members of the Democratic Party is now blaming President Biden for Vice President Kamala Harris's election loss. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi telling the New York Times Democrats may have had a better shot if the president had stepped aside sooner. And we're back now with our panel, Van Jones and Scott Jennings. Thanks for sticking around, both of you. Van, especially you. I do want to know, I'm not sure how good it does anybody looking backward at this point. However, I am curious what you make of the former House Speaker's comments.
Well, I listened to the whole interview, and she was doing everything she could to try to get out of answering the question. She asked the question multiple times in multiple ways. Eventually, you have to give an opinion. And I don't think her opinion is wrong in hindsight. Don't forget now, Joe Biden was doing better than he is now. And after the midterm elections, when he had to make a decision to get in or get out, he was just coming off of an incredibly successful legislative session that we had done really well in the midterms. And I think he started to feel like, hey, everybody keeps telling me I can't do this, I can't do that, and I'm winning. And he just went a bridge too far. I don't think anybody now can honestly say they are glad that Joe Biden stayed in. So I think Pelosi just being honest about that. But I think people think that she went on there to go after to Joe Biden. She did not. She got asked that question. She couldn't get out of the box, and she had to give an answer.
Right. I mean, exactly. Scott, do you think Biden was a key factor in Trump's victory?
Oh, of course. I mean,
the Biden of it all?
Of course. I mean, he's had an under 40% approval rating since August of 2021. The American people have been very unhappy with him. Yes, Democrats did a bit better in the 2022 midterm, but I think it was in spite of Biden, honestly. And the House Republicans did actually win the national popular vote in the 22 midterm. People keep forgetting that. We did have some bobbles in some Senate races. I think they totally overread what happened in that midterm. But on top of that, what I find particularly troubling is that all these Democrats who are now looking back on Biden and, oh, he shouldn't have run, he shouldn't have done this. These are the same people who were all too happy to go on television every day and tell us that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack, everything was fine, he was up to everything. And we now know there's huge amount of evidence that he wasn't, that he really was diminished, that he really wasn't up to the job. And yet they were pushing that campaign forward anyway. They finally dumped him after the debate when they couldn't hide it anymore. To me, the reckoning here is, when did everybody know Joe Biden was diminished? Why did they lie for so long? And are we going to get a full accounting of that? So I don't think Democrats have anyone to blame here but themselves. Joe Biden's going to go down in history as a pretty terrible president, I believe. And on top of that, if you're a Democrat, you think about how he ran his campaign the first time. I'm running to restore the soul of the nation, to rid us of Trump and Trumpism. Today, Donald Trump is stronger than he's ever been, more popular, and his agenda is ascendant in our politics. It is a complete and total political failure.
I mean, Van, that last part of what Scott just said is true. I mean, Trump did win and is more ascendant than he's ever been, even despite January 6th, despite all the stuff.
Did you think I didn't hear it when Scott was saying it? Like, you just wanted this? Yes. What do you want me to do? Can I leave? Listen.
Help us understand, Van.
What do you want me to do? Listen.
Jessica, we got to have to charge Van $500 an hour for these Saturday night
I know.
sessions. I'm telling you, we got to get a couch in here for him.
This reverse therapy. This is not making me feel any better.
Therapy.
So listen, look, there were some people, and I got to say, our colleague David Axelrod from the very beginning got beat up because he kept saying this is not going to work, and I'm concerned about his age. And he got beat up worse than I've ever seen a Democrat get beat up. And he was right. There were people who had the courage, not enough of them. And Scott Jennings is right. There was something going on, and if it wasn't going on in 2021 or 2022, by the time you got to that debate, there was clearly something off about Joe Biden. I love Joe Biden. Joe Biden gave me opportunity when nobody else did.
What stands out in this debate is how Scott Jennings stays focused on personalities while the larger structural reality is ignored, and that is where Van Jones' argument carries more weight, because Republicans did not win simply due to Joe Biden's unpopularity but because they built a long-term media and messaging system that Democrats still lack, with conservative-aligned outlets dominating talk radio, Facebook interaction, YouTube political views, and now short-form platforms as well, and a 2024 Media Matters study showed right-leaning pages beating left-leaning ones by huge multiples in engagement, not small margins, shaping public perception long before voters even think about approval ratings. While on Biden specifically, the claim that Democrats coordinated some lie ignores how incumbency politics usually works, since parties almost never push out sitting presidents after strong midterm results, as Obama, Reagan, and Clinton all faced approval problems but benefited from party unity. And what truly changed was not just Biden's age but the speed of online amplification, where one weak debate moment now spreads endlessly without context in a way that did not exist a decade ago. And when Scott argues that Trump is stronger than ever, that strength did not come from policy success, because Trump lost the popular vote twice, presided over net job losses before COVID adjustments, and left office with growing deficits even before the pandemic, meaning his comeback is driven by culture and media rather than performance, which directly supports Van Jones' point that Republicans hide their failures while highlighting Democratic flaws, even as Democrats delivered real material gains like infrastructure money flowing into red districts, manufacturing construction hitting 40-year highs, and record union election wins under Biden's NLRB, showing that the real failure was not substance but communication, because you cannot win modern politics with billion-dollar TV ads while your opponent wins the algorithm battle every single day. And that is not denial but a clear diagnosis.
But there's just a reality here. Now look, it is important to look back and learn these lessons. This is not a blame game. This is not finger pointing. This is the part of the grieving process and also the reassessment process that any mature party should go through. It just hurts because literally this time last weekend we thought we were going to run this dude off the world stage, and now we got to deal with him and all his friends and his family members and everybody else on the stage all happy, and we're crying in our beer. So it's a tough weekend right now, but Scott's not wrong. But I think where Scott is underestimating Joe Biden, I think history will be kinder to Joe Biden as the years go by. I think Joe Biden did some things that were very important. Trump talked about infrastructure week every week and never did it. Joe Biden actually got it done. We had a real problem with our technology infrastructure being offshored. With the CHIPS Act, he brought some of that stuff back home. Joe Biden did some stuff that we can all be proud of as Americans. And as the years go by, those things will shine through. But right now, people are looking at him and looking at Kamala and looking at all of us and saying, "What the heck did you guys do?" And I have a dunce cap on myself because I underestimated Donald Trump and his machine. And I did it every night. And that's the truth.
I will say to Van, because he worked for, Republicans are kind of thankful for Biden and previously Barack Obama. It was Obama's presidency that gave us Trump the first time, and it's Joe Biden's presidency that made Donald Trump stronger than ever. So we just want to say thank you to Obama and to Biden. We just want to say thank you guys. You guys have delivered us, and we're going to have American patriotism and economic optimism again, and it goes right back to Obama and Biden. So thank you guys. We're all for it.
I can't wait for the midterms. I can't wait. You guys got to overreach.
Just 2 years.
You got to overreach. We're going to get you. But right now, it sure hurts.
Van, I do want to ask you, President Biden and former President Trump are going to meet in the Oval Office on Wednesday, which is kind of, a norm in these sorts of, when we have a transition of power. What do you expect to see from that?
Well, I'm sure it'll be just like the last time they met in the Oval Office, and when Trump brought him over and sat him down. Wait a minute. This is actually not a norm. It's a norm that was blown out of the water when the last time President Trump was sitting in that office. He refused to even honor the man. And so it does show, I think, something important, that Joe Biden is not up here refusing to let the guy come in, refusing to speak with them. Kamala Harris is not organizing an insurrection. There's nobody going around saying that the election was stolen. We have a mature party that respects democracy. I hope the Republican Party will become a mature party that respects democracy, even when they lose.
What this exchange really reveals is how easily a presidency gets judged only by the most recent election instead of its real-world impact, because while Scott Jennings labels Joe Biden a political failure, that framing ignores the longer arc of policy and the way history usually reevaluates presidents, with infrastructure being a clear example, since for decades leaders from both parties talked about fixing roads, bridges, ports, and broadband, but under Biden those promises became reality. Through more than 40,000 infrastructure projects launched across the country, including many in rural and red districts, creating jobs, stabilizing supply chains, and strengthening local economies that do not vanish just because politics change. And the same is true for the CHIPS and Science Act, which did more than sound good on paper by driving hundreds of billions in private investment and new semiconductor plants in states like Arizona, Ohio, and Texas, directly pushing back against years of offshoring that hollowed out working-class communities. Even if those wins rarely trend online, they matter deeply in the real economy. And when people say Trump is stronger than ever, that strength comes less from achievement and more from a non-stop political machine built to reward outrage and repetition, while Democrats still act as if policy success explains itself even though it does not. But that gap in messaging is not the same as a failure of policy, and when it comes to Democratic norms, the contrast is clear, because Biden overseeing a peaceful transition, meeting his successor, and accepting defeat without chaos is not empty symbolism but something fundamental after January 6, showing that if democracy is a muscle, Biden chose to keep it strong even in loss. And while that example may not win elections, it is exactly the kind of leadership history often respects once the noise fades.